Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. I am so grateful that you're here. And as much as I wanted to be just like those little Chihuahua puppies in today's imagery and stay in bed, I am here. And so I'm grateful to be here with you. So welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining me. If you're new to this channel, this is your first time here, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. So special shout out to the Subscribe Star patrons. Thank you so much. I am actually going to be finally, after, poking at it and alluding to it for weeks and possibly months now, I'm going to start a weekly starseed check-in for subscribers only. So I'm not sure if it's going to be like an unlisted YouTube. I think maybe more of a Zoom chat that is only going to be available to Subscribe Star subscribers, where you get the link to the Zoom chat and we check in once a week. I'm not sure exactly when, if it's a set date, or if you think around the time of the major lunations would be cool. I would love your feedback, actually. So whatever you think about that, but it's only going to be available to subscribers, and it's going to be a much more intimate, like, community-based check-in as opposed to these transmissions, which is just me being the channel for what wants to come through today. So how is everyone feeling? I really do feel like I want to be the dogs in that image. Those are not my animals, by the way. I had been making a very I would say fairly comfortable living, being a professional house sitter and pet sitter, and it was actually how I ended up in Europe for 2 months in early 2019. And boy, we had a plan. We had a plan after that. We had a 3 to 5 year plan. We were going to travel the whole world. We had it so set up, booked solid for house sitting gigs, never having to pay rent or any utilities, but being paid to take care of other people's animals, which we are incredibly gifted at, right? We're both Syrian starseeds, my partner especially. He spent some time as a vet tech. He very much is like a canine in all of the most amazing ways that canines are part of our lives. And so we had a plan. So these two Chihuahuas that are in the thumbnail image, strangely enough, it was a gig that we were working in Vancouver, I believe, Vancouver, Washington, for about a week or so. And it was the time frame that we booked all of our Airbnbs. We booked our flight. It was the Spring Equinox, actually, of 2019. Wow, that was an incredible time. It was about a week to 10 days after that. Actually, I was just looking at the chart, strangely enough, for a different reason, for March 30th, 2019, and there was a Pluto was conjunct the South Node. So that was about 10 days after we had pulled the trigger on this event. And if you've been following me for any amount of time, you know that it was during that time that I had my walk-in experience while I was in Prague, and some incredible things happened. Catalyst started right after that trip, right? Venus and Jupiter came together at the Galactic Center in, I believe it was November of 2019. So anyway, that was just an aside, but for some reason I was really getting the message you should tell that story, because that was our plan. And then we all know what happened in January, February, March of 2020, right? It was the beginning of the end, right? Or the beginning of the end of a cycle and setting the stage for a new one. So weird. Sometimes the things that we, attempt to put into play are not really what's on the menu at a soul level. And it's only when we have that retrospective perspective, or that, hindsight, basically, that we see how beautifully it was all played out. But if we had known it at the time, we would have never fulfilled that trip and had the experiences that we had that were instrumental in what's happening now. So very interesting how things all work out. So how is everyone? I'm going to check in. I'm going to get out of studio mode here. I'm going to check in with the chat and see how the stream is doing. The plans we had, we just didn't see it coming. And it's really sad because I still want to travel. I mean, I never want to sit still. I never, ever, ever thought that I would move back to my hometown and, buy a house and be very, homesteading. Not that I don't want to do those things, but I love to travel. And once I got Seth on board, it was like, yeah, let's do this for a while. So if we had seen it coming, we would not have put ourselves in the positions we needed to actually be at a soul level for what it was. So, and a lot of times it's like that. It is like that. If you knew what was coming, like really knew what was coming, then first of all, there wouldn't be space for free will, right? Because it's dynamic. There's nothing linear or static about these relationships and chaos theory, right? Non-linear dynamics, all of these things. We were supposed to be in Thailand for a few years. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Our next stop was Southeast Asia. In that area. Jeez, it's crazy how it all works out, and bittersweet, right? Like definitely some disappointment with how beautifully crafted game, right? Taking our very natural skill sets and talents, and without having to even force it, just get into the flow of something. Because it's hard to find people who will take care of your animals the way that you do. And I've had some traumatic experiences returning from trips and my dog dying a week later. Not that that could have been prevented because he had cancer, but it was the idea that nobody else noticed his symptoms. And he ended up suffering a lot more than he needed to had I been around to see his symptoms and if people had actually paid attention. So anyway, it's I don't know why this time keeps coming back up and getting pulled into this. Maybe we need to look at the astrology around that time and see if there's something in particular that wants to come out. So one of the main thing I want to bring up today, the warmth of understanding, kind of getting, ourselves like wrapped up. It's good to, and as it's been coming through the last couple days, to still give ourselves some time to sit with things, even if they're uncomfortable, even if we know that something is off. Maybe we do feel disempowered. There's a lot of swiftness, and we've talked about this already, and the acceleration is now kind of at this point where it's just I wouldn't say permanent, but it's moving at that rate consistently now. And we want to activate or plant seeds or do something that allows for a manifestation process to either further on or to begin something. I would even argue really begin something. We feel it. We're ready to put something. It doesn't even matter anymore. Just give us resolution at any level so that we can make reasonable. And wow, isn't that interesting? That here, our new moon, right? The lunar cycle that we're in is building this capacity within ourselves. So we're not relying on anything but our connection to each other and to civilization as a whole and the ecosystem as a whole. So we're learning. And so part of this process right now is giving ourselves the space and just a minute here to just let things flush their way out of the system. So it's, I don't feel quite right still. It's gone from stuffy congestion to the post-nasal drip, which is just as obnoxious and annoying and uncomfortable, but that things are progressing, so you put up with it and you find ways to mitigate the process, right? But things are still off, but it's when you get to this point, right? The main viral load has dissipated, right? And there's a lot of cleanup happening. And it's during this time that you really can start to build your, the layers of crap again and go back to your old habits, or you can continue on and start allowing things to come out from deeper, more embedded places that normally don't get attention because we're too busy piling a bunch of garbage onto, literally, figuratively, energetically, onto our lifestyle. And so this is why really deep detoxes and stuff like that take take some real focus and some real determination and time. And part of it is just letting the process happen. So you may find that you are getting into some deeper realms, and there's a sense of discomfort and wanting to do something about it, and maybe some agitation perhaps. The moon is in Gemini. Of course, we're going to talk about all of that stuff today. And so we may feel kind of like the static, or, the data, the bits moving back and forth, and maybe it is a back and forth. Maybe it is a mirroring effect within our own self. Maybe it's just a consideration of stuff that maybe hasn't been addressed or just needs to see the light of day. And so even in, there could be just a lot of processes running in an effort to eradicate the deeper aspects of whatever virus you may be dealing with, either physical or, like I said, energetic or spiritual. We're all going through it. So when we look at the reading for a portion of today's transmission, I feel like we'll see a lot of the swiftness and a very warm and kind and almost innocent desire to really, put the staff in the ground and really birth something new, but a lot of energetic agitation, right? Things being off, maybe coming to terms with some aspects about our past that we still are not fully done, letting go of, or that there's attention that needs to be paid to something, and we are considering the options. This is the benefit of the Orion starseed nature, because we all have aspects that are challenges, and there are things that are assets. And for the Orions, for all of the problems that they have fucking caused, as far as I can tell, there is something to be said for their mastery of the realm of the mind and an unquenchable thirst for knowledge, and the use of the competitive spirit as a genuine motivation to get better at something. These are all very positive attributes. And so, but that also comes with having to face the uncomfortable antithesis, and there just feels agitation, and it feels like if we just let ourselves kind of curl up in the blanket, or to, find that warmth of understanding of a place that allows us to just like settle for 1 minute in comfort, and don't take advantage, or not take advantage of it, but don't take it for granted. I guess that goes hand in hand, huh? I think that we may find that it's just letting our spirit and our energetic body and maybe our physical body to do the work, right? To just allow it to get down to the deeper layers and process things out of the system. This is part of it, right? We're at a place we've never been before. And I think many of us can really relate to that on many levels in our personal life, in our spiritual life, perhaps, in the way that we cognize things or how we feel about them. And then out in the world as well. It's like, what in the flying fuck is happening? We've been kind of kept on pins and needles for like the last 2 years, and now it's, we're ready. And I think the full moon is going to be very incredible and this whole weekend too, leading up to it, the Super Bowl and Valentine's Day and the astrology connected to all of those things leading up to the full moon. Very challenging, but it's like a fork in the road kind of thing, like a definitive moment where we make decisions and face challenges. And I think we can just feel the buildup of that in our own lives and in the world around us. And those things aren't separate. So we're all just growing, right? We're all growing from this process. Diatribe is over. We'll get into the reading now. I had no idea what I was going to talk about. I just knew I wanted to go back to bed. And, it's okay, though, to feel that way. And it's also okay to just kind of, push through it and just acknowledge that's a feeling. It doesn't mean that I have to act on it, and doesn't mean that I can't live in two places at once, which is be here with you guys and also to experience that. So let's look at the reading, shall we? And how is everyone? I mean, I love when people participate in the chat and stuff like that. So, and leaving comments as well. Let's see here. We're going to bring up this reading. Where are you? So a couple things on the horizon here, just while we're getting ourselves settled here. I talked about the weekly starseed check-in or starseed gathering, something to that effect. So let me know what you think. If it's a Zoom chat where everybody's face and voice can be heard, I love that idea. Having conversations, sometimes it could be me doing an astrology teaching module, or we could read each other's charts as well, something like that, where it's more of a contained and private group because it's subscribers, and maybe it could be a higher tier system, I don't know. But also too, I'm going to go on to Rumble. I'm going to go on to Odyssey. I still do want to go stream on Twitch. We'll see how that goes. There's some weird resistance there that I don't understand. One time, a friend of mine who's also starseed person and a practitioner, we had talked about having a podcast and something about Twitch. And she tried to get on there and with a username and an account, and she kept getting like all these blockages, and finally the message she got was just like, it's kind of for her own protection, like it's not time to breach that on that platform yet, but that was a while ago. So but there's still some weird resistance to it. I don't understand it, so we'll just go with the flow, right, rather than trying to dig out a whole new stream right this second. So here's our reading for today. You can see that there's swiftness here, the Eight of Wands, our princesses. Ugh, this bitch keeps coming back. Sorry. I say that, as a negative or a positive designation. It's an exclamation of, and a designation of just an intensity of a person. And so, but this Princess of Wands, she really can be a bee, right? So she keeps coming back too. A lot. And so there's so much about this that is in our awareness, and especially in what is happening outside of us in the material realm, the matrix, as it were. So something about, again, dancing in the flames, the insatiable hunger for life, right? Joy, enthusiasm, optimism. She's hot. She is hot, and she is a seductress, and she will burn it all down just as quickly as she was like lusting after it, because you can't contain the fire. So, but in the center here with the Princess of Discs, right? It's still the Venus of, in this case, the earth sign, and it's a way different feeling in general. And I think it's the swiftness here, the Eight of Wands, Mercury and Sag, that really kind of takes this very kind and sensual and fertile and just a lot different of a person with the Princess of Discs, right? Ready to put the staff in the ground, right? Is not very, is often influenced a lot by the outside, because there are no other elements to support her personality, but also too that she can't really stick with anything, strangely enough. But ultimately it's this idea that a cycle is ending and a new one is beginning, and we have this sensitivity with Venus to start a new one, to be part of the manifestation of a new cycle. But the swiftness of which fire, right, the wands comes through, is taking this energy and turning it into something a lot more just a lot more fiery and a lot more impulsive, but also a lot more enthusiastic and courageous. And maybe that's what we do need. So let's start here with some of this imagery here. Here's the Eight of Wands, or Mercury in I think the first decan of Sagittarius. Now, Mercury is not very powerful in Sag. It's at its detriment. It's in the opposite of its home. One of its homes, which is Gemini. That's where the moon is right now. Black moon Lilith and the moon will meet today in Gemini, right? And she's retrograde. There is a very powerful, dark again, the underbelly of things, right? This primal aspect, something that is often really relegated to the corners of our own being, that will get a little bit more of an emotional expression or a sensitivity to it. And there's a lot of options for us to choose from. That's the thing. We don't have to get caught in the dialectic necessarily. We'll talk about that later, though. But the swiftness, you can see there's the link here of the rainbow, or the visible light spectrum. So we are talking about light when we're talking about Mercury, of course, and you see all the swift lightning bolts, but they are, there's 8 of them, right? They're going out in all directions in a very balanced pattern. There is the diamond or the square, right, that's here, and another square around it. So it's something that's very secure with the 8, but there is, 8 is that infinity sign, right? 8 is the divine intervention, right? Or not even intervention, but the gnosis. And this is swiftness, right? And so things can happen very quickly here. Very quickly. And decisive action at a high speed is very much needed. So we're looking at this causal factor leading up to the moment that's at the heart of the matter here, which is really wanting to begin a new project. So there's sudden realizations that may have happened. We may have decided something very quickly, right, in a flash. It was as if the solution has always been there, and it was just a matter of aligning our own mind with it rather than us like hashing out anything. And there's motion, there's changes, there's development. And we're talking about creativity because we're all talking about the wands. So we're talking about movement and action and transformation and a very swift mental that has already happened. Or this is showing something that is a larger, that may not have come to pass yet, if that makes sense. We're looking at a narrative structure when we look at these readings, and so it doesn't necessarily have to be legitimately like this happened in the past and then this will happen in the future. This is much more of a concept. It's an abstraction in and of itself with all of these parts that represent a part of the story. And so the idea here is that there has been sudden realization, a solution that already existed that was a matter of mentally aligning with it. So perhaps this is also when Mercury comes direct, because that has happened already, and it's going to be meeting Pluto this week, right, and then moving into Aquarius. But we don't have, where's the fire in the chart right now? There's not very much. It's Chiron in Aries, basically. There's no Sag, and but Leo, right? The Leo full moon will be a different story. But this is showing the sudden realizations, the motion, the changes, the development that come about, and the decisive action at a very high speed that is necessary when you come into this, light bulb moment. And it's not about knowing so much as understanding, right? Understanding is what Sagittarius is. So this energy then comes and meets with who we are, or somebody in our life, some kind of actual representation, personification of this energy, Princess of Discs. So you can see that the staff again is pointed down, it's planted. She has this yin-yang, balanced aspect of a shield. She's covered in fur that just kind of like hits the ground and spreads out as if it's endless, right? She's surrounded by trees, no foliage. Right, this is like the bones here, right? And you even see that she has antlers coming out, very Capricornian in that way. She's even looking down in some ways, and her hair appears to be almost part of the landscape in some ways. There does seem to be this little pedestal back here, but this is like the bones in the skin, which is very Saturnian, by the way, right? The building blocks, and this is about a birth of a new, or a beginning of a new project. This is the very end, representing that it's time to, start something new. And so she's very unwavering, she's very concentrated, she's very sensual and generous, right? She's got a warm heart. So she is a little too dependent on outside forces, right? You see, this is about the bones. Like with that, there's one thing to have the bones and the skin, right, the scaffolding, but without the rest of anything having an impact on that, then it stays just that way. But there's also, it's hard to adapt to them because, again, there's a very distinct material boundary here as well. So this person can, there's there needs to be a concerted effort to kind of balance these things out. But it does represent a birth of some kind, the beginning of a new project. She wants to start a new project, right? So you can see how the swiftness of the Eight of Wands, that's like, a bolt of lightning, or 8 bolts of lightning that hits this aspect here. You can see how it would start a fire in your own heart, right? In your own person, as the Princess of Discs, gets hit by lightning, the swiftness of understanding, and then is ablaze, right? Now, there are aspects here that are going to inflame this even more. And I would say when we see here the seven in the Akashic Tarot, the fated meaning, right? This is our karmic relationships. And then Archangel Michael, also reversed. Both of these are reversed. So remember that this is an inversion, or something that is not fully realized yet, or there's something out of whack about this energy in our lives. It really depends on where, who you are, what the reading is about, where the card is. But number 7, we know, is that, fall from grace. It's that opportunity. It is the, it is the number that's it's only divisible by 1 in itself, right? Which makes it a prime number. And it represents like the last piece before resolution, right? The 7th in a scale before you reach the octave. So at the last hour, right? Midnight hour, at the right time, when the time is right, people who have karmic contracts will come together when it's time for them to do so. So when this card is reversed, now, first of all, we're looking at this in the context of where the energetic, stability is, where we are finding the core of who we are, or where we're finding ourselves stabilized energetically. When this is reversed, it's like, there is a karmic meet, but there's something off about it. Or we've realized that somebody has fallen out of alignment with that karmic contract or relationship. Maybe the timing is off somehow. Maybe we're worried about not meeting our karmic contracts if we know that they're coming. Someone maybe hasn't truly woken up to the commitment to grow through this karmic relationship. People who are still very entrenched in the third density experience is not going to necessarily see relationships in their lives as being karmic. An inner voice may be saying that the progress and happiness in this relationship, maybe it is karmic, but that it's only going to lead to both of your growth if you're both involved with the karmic relationship. And a lot of times there are karmic relationships and one party knows about it and the other one is not willing to accept or doesn't see it, or whatever the case. And even though it's karmic, this is a lot of soulmate relationships too, that sometimes you just have to be like, I'm not going to grow the way that, there's still free will, even when you forget your soul. Oh man, that seems so, that's like advanced level. That's how you know that school is, or Earth is like advanced soul school. So there's a number of ways, but either way, there's something off here, or a realization of these karmic relationships, and it may be time to look beyond the relationship, right? That we've held out for as long as we can for these karmic relationships, whatever they are and whoever they're with, to meet the commitment that at a soul level we all came to, but it only works when both or all parties involved are fully present. And this appears to be that there is some issue around this. Maybe it's just a worry about this. Maybe there is, and I would offer that that's the case, that we're worried about something that really is just in the process of birthing, and that we need to kind of, give it a rest. You know what I mean? Like, instead of rehashing it over and over, or getting caught up in the karmic relationships that may have already happened and have gone through a process, and maybe there's some mirroring, maybe there's some overlap, but maybe we're kind of reading too much into the fact that some things haven't gone the way we want them to, or so I think we still need time. Again, the warmth of understanding, and sometimes in this case, maybe it's even just like a bolt of lightning. It's not even warm. It's like shocking. It shocks us into like just burning everything down in an effort to start something new. Oh boy. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. And in fact, I mean, that is kind of, the themes we've been working with, especially through this eclipse season. But that's something we've talked about before. So this is what is grounding us, is this kind of like awareness, but something is off about it. And then we have Archangel Michael too, number 9. So another major arcana or trump card is also reversed. And so not only are we rooted in this place, but we're also really releasing our attention and our awareness and where our focus is on the fact that we feel, again, disempowered. And maybe we need to maybe this is a reminder to reconnect to our real source of power. And maybe this is or opportunity to let go of those old karmic relationships. Maybe they are finally over and we can just let it go. Let go of those perceptions, those limitations, take action on your own behalf and do things that you love. You might not be able to control what's going on in other situations with other people. So in the meantime, instead of beating your head against the wall about things, perhaps you can take action on your own behalf. Do the things that you love. Let go of those perceptions and limitations, right? Let people be themselves. Rather than, putting all of your karmic growth or soul's growth in the hands of others, right? And I feel like we've been talking about this in a lot of different ways. So, but this is also, maybe we've become aware that we need to reconnect to a source of real power. Maybe our conscious attention has been on the fact that we know that we're feeling loss or weakness and that we have to do something about it. That involves taking action on our own behalf. And I would say this is a great place to put your attention if you're feeling this way. Not in a way that's going to, keep you rehashing or worried or stressed or anything, but by creating a sacred space within your own consciousness. And as you can see here, it's, this is part of our alchemical transmutation with number 14 and Count Saint Germain. So we'll look at that a lot more. So we see that the Princess of Wands here is our outcome, right? That with all of these things combined, in some ways, yeah, she's going to burn everything down as she passes it, but it's also, she's free, right? She's free. She's enthusiastic. She's, dancing in the flames. The water tiger, of course, is the year of 2022 in the Chinese zodiac. You have Vesta, the fire here, who is in conjunction with Vega right now. So yeah, we have to free ourselves of some aspects that need to be burned away, as we've talked about many times before, in order to find this freedom to actually birth something new. And something is birthing. We just have to give ourselves the opportunity to just be in the moment of understanding so that we don't end up working against ourselves or setting up resistance because our mind is trying to make sense of something that is not meant to be made sense of. And the problem is that the moon in Gemini, I think, is having us conflate our feelings with that, constant hashing of information and processing of bits. And I can feel that. And definitely in sleep. I don't know about anybody else, but it's just been especially after the moon came out of Taurus, right? It's just a very agitated, a little bit more agitated and not very settled in terms of that space. So this is not necessarily a bad thing, right? This is all of the beautiful enthusiastic, courageous dancing in the flames, right? But it does really suggest here, as much as we want to start something new, we still have to let some shit go and let it be released from us. And I think the full moon, the weekend into the full moon, which will be on Wednesday, it's going to be a big part of this, okay? We're still working with the first quarter square energy, which started that way. Are you going to look towards some sort of certification outside of yourself? exclusively like within civilization to say, hey, you're on the right track and you're doing the right thing? Or are you going to allow those aspects to grow within you first, right? You have to start in, your ability to just feel into the natural world before you can get to a point where you're mastering your ability to tap into it, right? It's got to start at a much more basic level. So we're going through that process right now of learning. Okay, so when it comes to the guidance surrounding these themes here, so the fated meeting, whatever that fated meeting, that karmic relationship, that contract that comes at the very right time when it's supposed to, and we know something's off, we feel like something's off, maybe it's in our subconscious, maybe we aren't quite aware of it, we just know we are aware that we feel disempowered in some way. Birth is it's a pretty standard image here. New things, a new start, maybe some labor involved, right? And so, whatever this new start represents for you when it comes to karmic contracts not being fulfilled, one party is not fulfilling, maybe something's off and you don't know. I mean, you can let go of those things, whatever they are, so that we can move forward into a space that will grow something new. Right? This is the process that we're in, this birth process. And so there may be some labor involved. And I think this is where the platypus is really important, because it says stop complaining and focus your attention on your blessings in your life, right? The attitude of gratitude, right? And it's really easy when you get going, right, that you can be like, I'm grateful for this, right? You can fill pages and pages when you get the process going, which is great. And also, too, where is your mental attention going? I think that's important to consider, too. And that's what this card and this animal message, what it really brings up. What does make you happy, right? What is it that really is a blessing for you? And consider your blessings. What is it that makes you happy? Maybe instead of focusing on what's not working, you can focus on the fact that the not working is a blessing, because it's teaching you something about what you do want. And, the 4 is a very secure number. That's why it's birth, right? It is the square. It is the four-sided structure that provides security and a foundation, right? It is the material aspect. And so it's something is coming, right? And there is a new start. I just think that there's so much focus on what's not working, or what is, and there's a lot to complain about. That's the, what I mean? Every day, right? You pick your poison, and that there's something that you can complain about, but it's all part of it. It's all part of it. How are we going to learn if things don't work, unless they don't work sometimes? If everything worked all the time, and maybe things not working are them working, and things being off is part of the birthing process, because without something that needs to change or transmute, there's no reason to create something new. So it's something to consider. And when it comes to where our attention is, and I think these are really useful tools, like every day, because that's where so much of our energy is in our mind and in what our conscious mind is paying attention to. You want to create that as a sacred space, right? And that means a lot of different things. It means being mindful of the information that you consume or you process or let into your awareness. It means that you want to focus on creating a sacred space for yourself wherever you are, your home, your office, if you're in an office, right, your workspace, your cubicle, like wherever, and I would argue even in your own mind, allow your mind to be a sacred space. Can you imagine if people in general, if that was like a cultural ideal, that your mental space was a pristine, sacred space? If we all endeavored towards that, man, wow, that would be something else. And so, think about that. Just, that in itself is something that can lead us in the right direction, as far as I can tell. And then you have the initiation and the Count Saint Germain, right? Number 14, right? The number of alchemy, the number of temperance, and Saint Germain, for all of the new agey propaganda and stuff. He is considered to be, the patron ascended master of the Aquarian age, whereas the Christ, or Jesus, as we know, the Christ is the patron ascended master or of the Piscean age, right? So we come into Aquarius, and it is Saint Germain that is said to be the patron, right? Which is pissing a lot of Christians off, you know what I mean? So, because we're, and that's, you can have any beliefs that you want to have about that. I'm just sharing what I know, and I just spilled my beverage everywhere. Damn it. Anyway, so that's today's reading. So be ready for the initiation, right? I mean, part of it, again, is like this process is part of our own initiation. And again, we can, do you want to have an initiation in a space that's anything less than a sacred space? I don't. And so, we know that we are changing, we are transforming, that we're going through an alchemical transmutation as a species, as individuals, as part of our ecosystem, as part of our galaxy, all of these things. Like, it's not just us on Earth right now, it's Earth in the solar system. It's the solar system in the galaxy, right? It's the center of the galaxy in the cluster of galaxies, right? There is change happening along all of these levels. And we have to, there will be a loss of lower vibe relationships and activities. That's just part of the upgrade into the next density, is that you don't function or vibrate with that level anymore. And so the things that are there will fall away, they will disappear, they will change, you'll feel differently about them. And the disciplines that you create now during this time they're going to stick, and they will be part of the service. And this is a lot of how I engage a lot of my clients when we, because a lot of the people I seem to work with are making the transition. They've woken up and they are ready to step into this role now. And so when you create these disciplines for yourself, when you find out and figure out through your own process what works for you, how you find your moments of transmutation, what they feel like, what brings them about, and how you can offer that as service. I mean, this is the initiation, and we're still going through it. I know they're tired, right? They're tired. People are very sick. People are struggling financially. The suicides are incredibly, mental health in general, abuse, all of these things are realities, and they have been for a long time, but now they're just so much more. So everything that we're going through is part of this initiation process. And again, I would say that in our own minds, it's in our own awareness, in our own consciousness. And even if we feel disempowered, maybe we take the action on our own behalf to create our awareness and our consciousness as a sacred space. And part of that is giving ourselves the space to clean out that which needs to be cleaned out. And fire, if fire is a big part of that. And so, again, this Princess of Wands is coming up so much that we really should pay attention to who she is and what she has to teach us, because there's something about there's something about worshiping fire. There's something, and not literally. You know what I mean? It's not like I think, I don't necessarily think that people actually believe that the sun was God. I just don't buy it. I don't buy that people were that naive when they were also incredibly sophisticated with astronomy and engineering and mathematics. I think they just thought it was a solid bet to put their energy towards the sun, because it was responsible for everything, because the sun, there's nothing in our universe as far as we know, right? They like to say dark energy and dark matter, but we know that anyway, a star is the pinnacle, right? There's nothing else. That is the highest potential that you're going to reach in this universe as a star or as a sun, right? And a black hole, that's just a star that collapses in on itself, right? A big one. And neutron stars, quasars, those types of things, they're all stars. They're all stars that die, right? That is the pinnacle. And so, I don't know, it just seems like a safe bet to give all of your attention to the one that gives us everything. I don't know, that's just my opinion about sun worship and where it may have come from. So I'm going to bring the chart up now, and then I'm going to pop over to the stream real quick and see what's going on. Looking pretty good, guys. That's awesome. People are just listening. I like that. I love the chat too. I really do. But it's also, I just get the sense that that's what it's all about right now, is the listening. And even though I'm here speaking, this is part of staying. This is just part of staying on a schedule. And this is part of staying consistent, which is pretty much the primary factor in just about anything successful. So, but there's a sense of like, yeah, just kind of slowing down, listening, kind of wrapping ourselves up a little bit and being like, it's okay. Like we do understand, and there's something here to kind of cushion us for just a minute, and maybe we just need to allow that to happen so that we can support our bodies and our hearts and our minds and our spirit to do what it needs to do to help clear out the garbage so that we can birth something new. All right, guys, so here's today's astrology chart. We're looking at the 10th of February. God, I can't even believe that. That is just something else that we're already here. So let's start with our moon, shall we? So the moon is in Gemini. Like I said, it's going to meet Black Moon Lilith today. And it's having a lot of challenge to it throughout the day. So even last night, the first thing, like 2:15 a.m., right? 2 a.m., probably a little more like 1:30. Yeah, you see that the moon in Gemini, in conjunction with Aldebaran, right? Fixed star Aldebaran. And what is Aldebaran related to? Oh, it's related to Archangel Michael, right? So this right here is in a square to Jupiter in Pisces, right? Jupiter, who is powerful in Pisces. Now this imagery here between these 2 degrees, 10 degrees Pisces and 10 degrees Gemini, are seemingly in conflict with each other. So the fact that they're squaring is just adding, all of this imagery is adding to what probably feels very much like 2 different directions. Because in the moon, in conjunction with Aldebaran, Archangel Michael, there is a nosedive, right? This is just making the commitment to a particular course of action, to a particular type of knowledge, towards a specific idea, and making the commitment and just following through with it. You're taking a nosedive, you're playing with danger, you're mocking gravity in some ways, and because the idea is not to crash. The idea is to mock nature or gravity and pull yourself out of it. And there does take some courage here. And Aldebaran is very connected to a lot of those types of themes. So Archangel Michael here, like taking the nosedive, like making the commitment, going into battle, and feeling this way. And his square to Jupiter, though, is doing the opposite, right? It is going up through the clouds, piercing the clouds, and going above the clouds, so that the ground is obscured, right? That you don't even realize that there's a ground. You are achieving a level of mastery in the mental spiritual realm, because you are transcending and going and even separating yourself from the nature, the material nature, and fully allowing yourself to access these realms. And in Pisces, right? So we are talking about the astral. We are talking about the spiritual or transcendental. So these two have definitely competing trajectories here. And then in a square, I mean, our feelings really finding a challenge with Jupiter, who's just the boss, right? And not in a Saturn way. Jupiter is the boss in a, I'm your manager type of way, or I am your advocate, or I represent you, or I'm going to give you everything you need to get this project done, as long as you are in alignment with the same core values. And one is having us expand spiritually, and the other is just our own personal agitation and a way to, this is a way to compensate for feeling disempowered. Is like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to go for it, right? And this square with Jupiter first, overnight really is that first real challenge of just like, well, wait a minute, or is this just, remember, this is just how you're going to feel right now because the moon is very transitory, whereas Jupiter in Pisces is incredibly powerful and very expansive, and it's having us go in a direction that's like, don't even trip about what's down there, right? Like, you don't need to prove nothing to nobody. Like, we're up here right now and we're spreading out up in this realm so that we can master this realm. Now, you don't need to prove anything by taking this nosedive, but when you feel disempowered, that's what you want to do. And I get this sense that we're really all kind of struggling on some level with this, either internally or in our actions. So, but what's happening at the same time is that this moon at Aldebaran is in a sextile 60-degree angle, see the blue line, with Chiron. And so what it is if we feel like we need to take the nosedive, right? If there is something there that is really, that was really drawing us into that activity, despite like this, the hot air balloon, essentially, that's just like, the weather balloon that's like above the clouds or whatever. It's seeing things in a completely new light, right? I think that seeing our own potential as an abstraction, right? Whereas we've been very emotionally aroused in the past by certain images, now that we can see them from a wider, more abstract perspective, hopefully, and see our own victim status, our own wounding, right? Our own shame and guilt for who we are that's been elicited. That, on the other hand, can really allow for some sort of activation, I think, at the very same time, right? To see it from a totally different perspective, to see, not even a different perspective, to see it from a wider abstraction rather than to get caught up in the emotions of it. We do that, and I see that this nosedive, that feeling is just a feeling, and we can let it pass, right? We can let it pass. And I'm not saying we should keep our head in the clouds all the time, but it's really, Jupiter in Pisces like this is really no match, even with the moon in Gemini. It's not an unpowerful place for the moon, but it's certainly not where our feelings are the most happy, is in this area. So one way, again, to make the most of this, I think, is to apply it to maybe some sort of analysis of triggers and something to that effect, right? This was overnight, so this is something that maybe have come out in the dream state. Now, a lot of what's going on with the moon today is going to find a lot of challenge because Gemini is in a quincunx to Capricorn. So the moon is going to quincunx, as you can see here. It's going to start with Mars and go to Mars, to Venus, and then asteroid Vesta is right here at 15 to 16 degrees. So in conjunction with Vega, right? And so the moon is going to be quincunx all of these. And what's the quincunx? It's the 150-degree angle. It's the 5/12, right? It's the thing that doesn't fit. So the mutable air does not fit with the themes of cardinal Earth, right? Just like, even if you're taking a nosedive, cardinal Earth is like, yeah, the law of gravity, though. So if you don't have the means to, for example, work against the law of gravity, these things aren't fitting together. You're just going to crash. And so all through the morning and overnight into the early this morning, you see here that the moon is in these quincunxes and will do so all morning. So and Mars and Venus are so close, and the cool thing about them is that they're going to be conjunct on the 16th in Capricorn, and then they're essentially traveling together all the way until they are exactly conjunct again at 0 degrees Aquarius around the next new moon. So roughly. So like beginning of March. So they're going to be traveling together in the same whole degree, like the whole time. This is really favorable, especially when you're talking about Capricorn and talking about birthing something. first of all, talk about Venus and Mars coming into a conjunction, first of all. And then you have them traveling together after they've pretty much consummated their relationship. And then they're going to travel together until they get to 0 degrees Aquarius, which becomes the spiritual ideal of what they've physically created. So, but in the meantime, the moon in a quincunx to both of those. Again, we're feeling into like our need to do something or to perform something or informing a social function. Maybe we're trying to transcend the limitations of, the physical existence and try to bridge the gap telepathically. We are getting very dramatic in our speech, and we have something that we really need to say, right? There is a real agitation that get brought out every time the moon comes into a quincunx with Mars and then Venus and then Vesta. So Mars is the masculine, Venus is the feminine, right? The seed and the soil, and then Vesta is the hearth fire. So all of them are situated in an area that has to do with the collective socio-political structure, the economy as a whole, the unfolding of the natural world as the law of nature. It's the healthcare system as a whole, the government as a whole, right? All of the Capricorn socio-political physical structures that provide security and a sense of containment not just for ourselves, but that contains all of us. So while we individually are feeling like I got to do something, I got to perform something, I got to say something, I even have to like communicate it telepathically somehow, these aspects are just like, well, that doesn't really fit with a much, we're over here dealing with like society, okay? What's best for society, how we can, capitalize on all of our group integration. And it's not like they're opposed to each other, they just don't fit. And so you have to find a way to make them fit. And I would say that, of course, all of our own individual talents and skills and techniques and everything else that we know how to do can be applied eventually, of course. But they're so not... They so don't address the same basic ideas that sometimes you're like, well, it has to be just one or the other. I can't make them fit. Well, that's what transmutation is. And so you find a way to make them fit. But it's not going to be a matter of forcing that round peg into the square hole. That's ridiculous. I mean, you can try. It's going to be about adjustment. And so we're going to find, even already this morning, feeling like I got to find a way to adjust myself. And what's really going to help is going to be when the moon then comes into a trine with Saturn in Aquarius, right? So it's really important that when you talk about being part of an ecosystem or part of a civilization or part of any kind of organization or association where everybody is equally able to act, everybody is it's not equitable, but everybody is equal in their influence, especially now. Energetically, I would say, there is a need to, watch over yourself or to, especially to protect yourself from those who would want to take advantage of that connectivity or who want to strip you of your individuality, right? And so once you get to fifth density, it feels like that there's no need to shield yourself and there's no need to fight the spiritual battle because that's where the transmutation comes from. So every dialectic is a simultaneous creation over and over and over. This is why it's so great, right? Because everything is a magical opportunity in opposition. But, before you get to that point, you're kind of still living in this, binary system where it's only either or. So, and when you harness the energy from that before coming together into a trinity, that is the siphoning. So Saturn is actually working, strangely enough, in our favor in terms of providing some sort of framework here of just like you have to protect yourself. You have to be aware astrally what is influencing you. So if you're an instrument, a fine-tuned instrument, you have to know that, at certain temperatures it might break or certain conditions it might stop functioning. That's part part of it too. And Saturn is very much like the dad that puts his foot down and is just like, this is just what it is, right? Or this is the responsibility, right, of protecting everybody's individual rights and that which is, your birthright, basically. And so it's interesting, the Sabian symbol is like a watchdog, right? And so there's this aggressive protective factor that could be thought of too, but it's really just like, when you are part of a system as a whole and everything is connected, there is a necessity on some level to safeguard yourself, right? And it's when you get into Pisces that you realize that ultimately that only takes you so far too, right? Everything goes back to whence it came. But in the process of going from the third to the fifth density, we still have to live with that reality. So what's interesting here is the moon, it finally, after, all night and into the morning of just being so agitated, and really looking for some way to express ourselves or to find this balance when there is none, or the balance is just the constant back and forth of Gemini, we find finally a moment of metamorphosis. And it's coming from Saturn that's just putting the anchor down, and the force field. It's like a force field that is around ourselves and the collective. And that in itself, I think, is what's going to finally stabilize our own internal experience here and go from a really to like kind of mature ourselves in our thinking, right? Because what happens when we're constantly just like, oh, I got to do something, I got to know more, I got to consume more content, I got to get more intel, I got to go do this, I got to think about this and this and this and this, and I do this all the time, believe me. I mean, it's not easy to have to have your mind be doing this, but there's something here that leaves you open when you do that all the time. And this is a moment where we're like, oh, okay. When you kind of get yourself like that force field in some way, whatever it is for you, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay. That just like matured my thinking considerably. And in this case, the way you feel about thinking in some way. It's so confusing. Not really, though, but we all know what I'm talking about. It's just a matter of having the right words. Now, the last piece here, as we go through the rest of today, is that we're going to find here, I'll just show it on this chart. We're going to find that the moon, and this looks to be about 8:15 p.m. So by the end of the day, what we're going to find here is, make sure you guys can see it. Yes. What you're going to find here is that the moon comes into conjunction with Black Moon Lilith, who's currently retrograde. So these are two lunar aspects, right? The moon in its orbit and is conjunct with the space, the void, the dark space, the negative space that is between the apogee and the Earth. So the apogee of the moon's orbit and the Earth itself. That's the middle, is Black Moon Lilith. And then the moon is conjunct this point. So we're going to have more accessibility emotionally and intuitively and subconsciously to something that is normally way more tucked away into a deeper part of ourselves, right? The part of ourselves that's not even attached to our own psyche necessarily. Now, it is retrograde, so there's some inversion, there's some internalization, even more internalization, not fully expressed. In some ways, that may be good. And so when this happens, when this conjunction happens, it's like you become aware of all of the possibilities. And it's just a matter of putting it on your plate and taking it back to the table with you, right? That's the thing about living in a multicultural, global society in some ways. Or, for instance, you go eat at a buffet. It's the same idea here, is that you go and you're in a cafeteria and there's all kinds of different foods from all different kinds of regions, and you can just try them all, right? And that can be also very overwhelming and confusing if there's just so much, or your eyes may be bigger than your stomach. But I also get the sense here that we're going to have a really distinct knowing that it's really just up to us what we want to pick, right? And that it's all in front of us. And it's all in front of us, and it has been, right? And I'll pick what I want too. It's also, there's a sense of just of wanting to be in total control of what we pick. So I feel like that by the end of today, when I say pick, I mean like a perspective, an action, some sort of performance, some sort of like mental, mental trajectory, right? Communication, all of these Gemini things. And when we're talking about the moon, it's just really what's going on internally, how we feel, how we adapt, how we, adapt to the world around us. And so we don't want to totally lose sight of, or completely take ourselves out of the realm of possibility and ideas and what we could do individually, how we can fulfill ourselves, how we can express ourselves. We don't have to, it's not like we have to give any of that up just to be focused on what's going on at the socio-political level, even though that's where like so much of you have Mercury, Venus, and Mars. These are 3 personal planets. Like we are all way more invested right now in our attention into what's happening there. But we definitely want to stay connected to our own individual fulfillment, our individual expression, and our individual like virtuosity. And there's something very deep about our survival that needs to be accessed. And I feel like it will, right? Whatever it is for each of us. So knowing where Gemini is in your chart, and if you have any mutable energy at, 20 degrees, that's going to have, because that's where it is, 20 degrees Gemini. It's going to have an impact on you. So that's it for the day. So we go into, let's see, tomorrow. And tomorrow we'll do the astrology for the weekend because it's just outrageous, of course. And we'll go back here and look. The moon will be in Cancer, right? And so the moon's going to be in her home sign. Let's see here. By the end of the day here, this is Friday, right? So by the end of Friday, the moon's going to move into Cancer. You can see that Mercury and Mercury and Pluto are going to meet tomorrow as well. Mars and Venus are getting closer to each other. The moon will be very powerful in Cancer, as it is every month. And so we're going to have some interesting opportunities over the weekend. We're going to revisit that mystic rectangle that happened at the full moon in January, minus the sun this time. Just Pluto is involved, but the moon will be in the same place, right? This is very Pleiadian. This will be a huge Pleiadian activation again, right? Because the mystic rectangle is going to be involving the nodes of the moon as well. And so we did this once already last month, and now without the sun involved, it's going to be a lot easier and a lot it's the emotional manipulation and the ability to really get at people emotionally, to get under their skin, to utilize manipulative tactics of control and power with Pluto involved. All of that is, it's the day of the Super Bowl and it's going to be happening. So, and leading up to it. So also know that, man, I'm going to go and look. Maybe I need to do some research. I suspect, but I this is just a hypothesis. My hypothesis is that the Super Bowl every year is orchestrated to be when the moon is crossing Sirius. So, which explains a lot of the ritual at the halftime show. I don't know if this is true. This is just something I thought of yesterday. So I'm going to do some research and look at it and see if that's actually the case, because it will definitely be there this Super Bowl. I'll tell you that much. And so that's interesting to me. So I'm going to leave it there, my friends. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you're interested in a reading, if you're interested in energy work, I am still offering the Pleiadian Revival Starseed readings up until the full moon. Otherwise, you can go to catalystenergies.net. That's in the description box below, and you can check out all of my services and testimonials and anything else that you want to get information about. You can email me if you have any questions, of course, and you can always support this work through Subscribestar. And if you want to be part of a much more intimate community and a weekly space where we can really hash some things out, ask questions, talk to each other, maybe do more in-depth type of work, then really consider subscribing. It's only $3 a month right now, and you'll have access to those weekly gatherings for your subscription. So in the meantime, guys, have a great day. Whatever you get into, give yourself some slack, give yourself some warmth of understanding that you've gotten this far, right? Allow your body and your spirit to process things out still, and create space, right? We want to create space for something new to grow. And part of that is creating and cleaning out the space. So that's still happening. It's still happening. And so I'll see you guys tomorrow, and we'll do some astrology for the weekend. I'm getting the forecasts out for the full moon by sign, the full moon leading up to the March new moon. Those will be coming soon. And yeah, if you're curious about your starseed markings, this is a great time to cash in on that sale, because I'm not going to be offering it for much longer, at least not right now. So love you guys. Thanks for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I just came over to the chat. I thank you, Alex K. He says, I'm following along, just not in a very talkative mood. See, this is what I'm talking about. Great morning, got derailed. Oh man, this effing job. Yeah, you said it. And we've talked about that many times. That's what it feels like, though. It feels like we want to create, right, and just kind of let things either come in or let things flow out, and not put so much energy into trying to direct the course of anything right this second. So I totally feel you. And I think that I think that many people can probably grok this right now. So just take it easy and give yourself the space to just be. And yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow, and we will do some astrology. Until then, I love you guys. Have a great day. Have a blessed day. And peace out. Bye.